Peter Dutton's plan to break up the supermarkets has run into a roadblock from his own party. Joining us live, our Wednesday panel now, Labor MP Julian Hill and the Liberal MP Keith Wallahan. Good morning to you both. Keith, to you first this time. Liberal MPs reportedly felt ambushed yesterday over the policy. Was that the case?
Shock horror. The Coalition and the Liberal Party like to debate complex public policy. That's what we do in party rooms. We don't talk about the detail of what happened. But of course, for a significant issue that has competing values, we're going to have a serious debate and we're going to land on a position that is consistent with the national interest and also our values. That's what the Coalition has always done, and that's all that happened yesterday.
So your name was identified in this report in The Australian this morning. What's your beef with it? What's your biggest issues with it?
Well, this is complex. I wouldn't be doing my job if I walked into a debate and just ticked off that everything's fine. So, of course, we're going to scrutinise the detail of a particular policy. And again, I'm not going to go into the detail of what I said or didn't say, but it is important that we land on a position that is in the national interest. And let's talk about the actual problem. At the moment, we have a concentrated market power in a sector that affects Australians every day. Every day, we are seeing queues out the door for food banks. I spoke to a food bank in my electorate yesterday. In a 4-hour period, they gave food to 150 people. 150 people. And there's 6 food banks in my electorate. We've seen food prices go up by 11%. And so what we are looking to do is to give a little bit more leverage to the umpire, the cop on the beat, to make sure that the power is not concentrated excessively. And that's what Section 46 of the Act is about.
Julian, you got a thought on this?
I've got many thoughts. I'm going to give Keith 9 out of 10 for managing to keep a straight face and use a serious voice there. And I'm going to try and get through this without laughing. I mean, this puts me in a difficult position because I've said for the last couple of weeks, it's difficult to pick their dumbest policy. Is it to let you use superannuation to buy a house and push up the cost of housing? Or is it risky, expensive, slow nuclear reactors to push up the cost of power? I mean, that was the choice. Now we've got a third choice. They're going to get out the big stick and break up the supermarkets to push up the cost of groceries. That's what the economists and those who've looked at this, even that, left-wing socialist, I mean the Conservative former Victorian Premier, Jeff Kennett, said this is madness. It would push up prices. Now, you would remember, some of your listeners would remember, Keith wasn't here last term, when that genius, the Shadow Treasurer, was the Energy Minister, and we had the hilarity, the ridiculous policy of the big stick. He was going to use the big stick to whack energy companies and break them up and so on. I mean, there were rather silly phallic jokes that permeated the parliament about Angus's little twig and the toothpick and all this kind of nonsense. And now here we are again, we're back with the big stick. It was Greens, National Party, populist nonsense, and Keith was absolutely right, along with many Liberal colleagues, to speak out against it. Dutton split his party room. It's a shambles. It's not a serious policy. The government is strengthening the code of conduct on supermarkets or in grocery retailers, the grocery big giants, and putting huge fines in place rather than this nonsense that'll push up the cost of groceries.
Yeah, Julian's right. I mean, Jeff Kennett did say that, Keith. He says it's madness. The Retailers Association, Paul Zara, he says he's concerned about unintended consequences here. Aren't the Liberals supposed to be a friend of business?
We are a friend of the national interest. That's what the Liberal parties are, and we will always act in the national interest and consistent with our values as Liberals. I think, look, I understand and respect the commentary of many others, but I think with respect, they're going off a headline. The devil is in the detail. And divestiture triggers many people as a word, but the devil is in the detail, and there are very specific safeguards. This is about just giving a little bit more leverage to the umpire, a little bit more leverage. And it's leverage that people in smaller and medium
umpire
businesses
or government
don't have,
intervention?
and certainly farmers don't have. No, it's the umpire. It's about giving more leverage to the ACCC. Our free market isn't a free-for-all. It isn't complete anarchy. We have rules, we have guidelines. And the Australian economy has traditionally lent itself to concentration of market power. Now, some will say there's various reasons. It's the size and the distribution costs of building infrastructure, but it is what we have to deal with. So the ACCC is a very important umpire for our market to operate effectively and in the national interest. And that's what yesterday was about.
Okay,
Julian. There's no detail. It's like the nuclear pamphlet. There's no detail. I mean, there's no detail. There's never any detail. You put out a 4-page energy policy with a cut-and-paste picture of a Rolls-Royce nuclear reactor, no costings, no detail. It's like the migration nonsense. You can't answer basic questions about any of these nonsense policy proposals.
Okay. You're welcome to join the coalition and get the details.